Joining me on stage now, please welcome to the stage Bob Mumgaard, the founder and chief executive of Commonwealth Fusion Systems. Welcome, Bob. All right.
Great.
You're in the hot seat now.
Yeah, great. I'm used to hot things.
Hot things, yeah. Fusion, very hot. Okay, just making sure. We're all good to go.
Okay.
Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
What did you make of the Energy Secretary's remarks?
You know, energy is really complicated.
Yes.
It touches basically everything about GDP, prosperity. It touches technology, it touches science, touches people's emotions. It's a really, really difficult topic. And at the same time, it has a long arc. Right? Okay. And so I sort of look at the long arc of energy and think through, obviously I'm like the further out one, and think through like, okay, are these changes at this particular time going to be, you know, the end of the world, the end-all, be-all of everything? No. Like, at the end of the day, the energy system's really big. It is slowly evolving. And innovation happens, policies change. The lights will probably still turn on tomorrow. Okay,
well, let's hope. We'd all be in trouble if they didn't. Let's just do some level setting and sort of catch people up, because I know that we just had an intense conversation about one thing. We're now going to talk about fusion energy. Fusion has been talked about for a long time. I mean, 50-plus years, people have been talking about this, and some have been saying it's around the corner. It's not quite here yet. Can you just do a little bit of a tutorial for us? What is fusion in just the simplest way possible? How is it different from nuclear power? Why might it be so important?
Yeah, so fusion is the power that's inside all the stars. And for a long time, we had no idea how the stars even worked. And it wasn't until Einstein, about 100 years ago, they were like, oh, there must be a reaction that's happening in those stars that's taking light elements and combining them together. And in the process, producing huge amounts of energy without really consuming very much. And hence, the stars could be very old. And so we've known about it since before we discovered splitting the atom or radiation. We've known that this was the power source of the universe. But the challenge is, like, you have to actually make that happen on Earth. It doesn't just happen naturally. And so over the last 5 decades, there's been a concerted effort internationally in open science to be able to create machines that can make that reaction happen. That reaction has some fundamental things about it that are different than, say, splitting the atom, nuclear power as we do today. There's no chain reaction.
Okay.
So that means it can't run away.
That's a good thing, right?
That's a good thing. You can't make a bomb out of it.
Great.
There's no long-lived nuclear waste. So there's nothing you have to worry about for thousands of years. That's a good thing. Great. The fuels that you would use, you need very little of them, and everyone has them, and they are geographically everywhere.
What are they?
Isotopes of hydrogen, basically stuff that's in water. Like this glass of water has enough of the fuel in it to power my whole life, my whole lifetime.
Wow.
Yeah. And so these are fundamental to the reaction itself.
Okay.
The challenge is you actually need to be able to take technology that can actually make that reaction happen in a useful way.
And so if we've understood it for so long, why has it taken so long? I mean, it was 1958, I believe, a team of scientists announced that they had achieved fusion. Then they retracted the news. So why are we to believe that it's actually around the corner right now? And we'll get to a lot of the statements that suggest that people are, really betting on Commonwealth Fusion Systems to be one of the ones, perhaps the one, to get us there first.
Yeah, it's a long arc of science. So you could actually make similar statements about a lot of other technologies that today are very commonplace. People talked about flight for thousands of years before the Wright brothers. People talked about AI. And how many of you have used ChatGPT in the last couple days? And they always...
No, I want to know the answer to that. How many people?
That was seemingly an impossible technology that people said would never happen, and that had been talked about and had never been achieved, therefore it never will be achieved, right? That's true for most technologies that are important in the world. They had moments where we didn't think they were ever going to happen. But one of the great parts about humans and ingenuity is we keep solving problems, we keep understanding systems, we keep making them better and better. And in fusion, we've done that actually faster than Moore's Law. It's not yet at the point where it's useful the way that ChatGPT is useful. But the underlying progress is there, the same way the underlying progress was there in AI models, the same way the underlying progress was there in mRNA before we had the COVID vaccine. And so that in fusion, that has happened over decades, funded mostly by governments. We're the largest private fusion organization in the world. That's a relatively new thing, but we're actually smaller than many of the government programs.
Okay.
And we've built layer by layer and layer until we finally actually, 2 years ago, a government lab in California, Livermore, produced a reaction that made more power out from the reaction than it took to heat it up, a big laser called NIF. So now we have, as humans, as a species, we have created a star in a machine in California. And that was the dream of 1958 when it was all declassified. And that has unlocked a bit of a race to actually take that underlying science and understanding and turn it into things that could be useful of generating power.
And so how close is it, though? And I ask because, if I have this right, your first delivery is due next year, and commercial delivery in the United States is due by 2030. Is that real?
Early 2030s is what we think for commercial. But the plant we're building right now in Massachusetts, it's just outside of Boston, that is about 70% complete. It's about a $2 billion facility. It's one of the largest next generation energy facilities in the world. And that is going to start turning on next year. 27 is when it's more likely to actually make fusion reactions and more power out than in. But that's much closer than what we thought was possible even 10 years ago. So we've seen a drastic acceleration in just fusion science over the last 10 years.
And so let's say this is actually possible. Let's say you get to a place 5 years from now where you're actually being able to make more energy than it takes to create. I mean, I don't know if I don't want to.
That's accurate.
Is that accurate? Okay.
Yeah.
How do you scale it, though? Because I think some people hear that and they're like, oh, that's the holy grail of energy. That will solve all our climate problems. But I think there's got to be a huge leap between a breakthrough like that and even the ability to do it at a commercial scale in the 2030s and somehow powering large swaths of the world that are still reliant on fossil fuels.
So there's some important numbers in this. So if you think about all the electricity generating plants in the world, there's about 60,000 plants. If you take those and say, give me the big ones, the ones that you could power a town on, there's about 3,700 of those. So that means there's 3,700 places on the globe where there's a power plant that is generating hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue and is powering its local community. Those power plants are, on average, 28 years old. So that means that gives you a sense of the cycle of what it's like to build power plants. And we built that. We continue to build that. We continue to grow that globally. This is just a new technology that does the same basic job. Piece of land, you put a plant on that land. Instead of burning coal, it creates a fusion reaction. It puts electricity out that connects to the grid the same way. So the first thing you do is you say, give me plants that aren't economic anymore, fossil fuel plants that communities don't want anymore, or that have aged out. Now, replace them with a new technology.
How much would that cost, though? I got to believe these things are enormously expensive. And I want you to address this because when you talk about, there's the energy input to actually make the reaction, but then there's the energy required to build these enormous plants. And I understand, I mean, even as you get closer to actually getting something deliverable, the actual size of the plant keeps getting bigger and more expensive.
Yeah, in general, fusion is complex, right? It takes quite a bit of effort to be able to harness that reaction. But complexity is getting lower and lower cost. Okay. So if you think about the tools we have at our disposal on new materials, on ways to compute things, on ways to actually manufacture things, advanced manufacturing, all those things are actually coming down pretty aggressive cost curves. And so right now, the plant we have in Massachusetts, about $2 billion plant. Just scaling that up, no more innovation, that would be commercially competitive in some markets. It would not be commercially competitive in, say, PJM.
How much power do you expect it to produce, though?
Yeah, so that plant, we won't actually sell power from that plant, but the plant, we're building one in Virginia.
How could it be economically competitive then?
Yeah, I said if you scaled it up, right? So if you just took that and you said blindly just make it a little bigger, that would produce power at power prices that would be competitive in Singapore, Tokyo, places in Europe, wouldn't be the cheapest cost of power.
How much power can these plants actually produce, though?
Yeah, it would be somewhere in the order of about 400 megawatts. So that's the size of a pretty big coal plant, size of a big gas plant, nuclear plant.
Half a nuclear reactor.
Half a nuclear reactor.
Yeah, okay.
And you could put more than one of these together to replace, say, a nuclear reactor. And so that scale-up challenge is a number in the thousands of plants, of which the world already builds thousands of plants, that make similar amounts of power, that have similar amounts of stuff in them, if you just look at the amount of steel and concrete and stuff that's in them. It's just you don't have to pay for the fuel anymore. And so that is where you end up with the win.
Got it.
That, like, you build a capital-intensive thing that's very concentrated, and the same way a gas plant. And if you've ever been to a gas plant and seen how complicated a gas plant is, they are pretty complicated. Yeah. You had Scott up here, right? He's got a good business building really complicated machines that make power. Except now you're not consuming anything anymore.
You've focused largely on the economics and sort of the power math of this conversation. Is climate important to you? Is it important to the Commonwealth story?
It's important to me personally, and to the Commonwealth story, but it's not the primary driver. Primarily because it puts the world in a tension of you can either have the climate or you can have energy. And we think that's a false dichotomy.
Say more.
That the history of energy has been we find better and better ways to make it. And those ways have less and less externalities. Like if you go back to like people picking up horse and cow manure and burning it, where I'm from in Nebraska, that was a pretty messy business and didn't make very much energy. Or you think about like lighting all of our lights with oil from the head of whales, right? Like the history has been we make technologies that give us the things we want with less of the things we don't. And so I'm here as the innovator on this. It says like the curve of innovation. I mean, yeah, we're in Manhattan, and like just down the street is Pearl Street, where Edison built the very first commercial power plant. That was crazy at the time, right? That is the way out of this. Innovation is the way out of the seemingly unreconcilable between energy, security, and an environment. And so we can't stop the innovation side. And innovation is actually relatively low cost compared to the size of the system that we're dealing with a $100 trillion system. So like, yeah, we raise a lot of money, we spend a lot of money, but it's peanuts compared to the overall system scale. And that's where the value is going to come. It's going to come from innovation.
What's your relationship with the Trump administration like? We just saw backstage you and Secretary Wright talking about seeing each other next week. Is the Trump administration supportive of your work?
Fusion's been very bipartisan for a long time. And so going back, I was at MIT working on fusion, 4 administrations ago, and very bipartisan. It's always been bipartisan. So Trump 1.0 was helpful, passed a couple laws that have been very accelerative to U.S. fusion, but Biden was also helpful. Bold decadal vision. Trump is, again, helpful. And I think that's one of the cool things, too, about innovation is it is broadly bipartisan. I just testified last week to the House Science and Space Committee, and that was a very fruitful discussion, as normally happens on that committee. And that's because, America has done well when America innovates. What
else do you need from the federal government at a state level, federal and state level, to get you what you need? I mean, permitting, we've heard throughout the day, we heard from Governor Newsom, has been a major impediment to building in this country. Are you able to build what you want when you want, or is there still red tape that you're trying to bust through?
So we are subject to the same issues that everyone else in energy is subject to at scale. So we're not at scale today, but when we get to scale, we will be subject to those same issues of how fast can you build in a permit-constrained environment. Separating those out, which I'm very, very enthusiastic about everyone who's trying to remove that red tape, plow out in front of us. Separating those out and saying, what are the specific things around the things that we are doing? One was regulation. So, when we started to build the facility in Massachusetts, it was a constitutional level question of, who even gives you the permit, right? It's a fusion facility. And our conclusion is, well, we will figure that out while we build it, because we're pretty sure that, when it's built, we'll have an answer. We'll force the answer to emerge. And through that, through dialogue with the community, dialogue with the state, dialogue with the federal government, it was decided that we should take this up as a national issue. And so in 2020, they tasked the NRC with studying it. And the NRC, over 2 years, had many, many public consultations and ruled about a year and a half ago that fusion would be regulated separate from fission, which makes sense. It's not the same thing. And something that looks similar to how we do particle accelerators. And that then opened the path, so now we have regulatory certainty in fusion. The UK has done something similar. Japan is working on it right now. The G7 has it on their agenda. So that's the type of work that is like, really blocking and tackling on a specific issue of the thing that will stop this technology from being able to be deployed is certainly if you have no idea who actually gives you the permit.
You mentioned
figure it out.
Yeah, you mentioned the EU, the UK, Japan. Those are all historical allies of the United States. You didn't mention China. China is racing ahead in a lot of energy technologies, as we've talked about throughout the day, including fusion. Are you at all concerned that they might get there first?
As an American, I am.
Why? Why does that concern you?
So first, I'm going to say, as a citizen of the globe, like China deploying lots of low-carbon energy sources to make people's lives better is not a bad thing, right? When it intersects geostrategic, where you have to realize that energy is power, like the history of things have been, those who have energy get to set agendas because they use that energy to make products. They use that energy to lift their people up. They use that energy to innovate. Like you cannot have a prosperous country without energy. They are exactly correlated. And so the idea that a different style of government that ties a bunch of other things to an energy or to a technology, that's a dangerous idea. And watching them build, I mean, I'm on a Senate commission that just released a report last week that, using satellite imagery is like, these are fusion facilities that China has not disclosed that they're building. And watching them build very quickly.
Was that public or was that classified, by the way?
No, that's public now.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah.
Would have been a good piece of news.
Yeah. But you can
are you checking it now? You're like, I hope that was?
No, I know, yeah. SCSP.
I don't know if he knows.
But that is watching the decision-making to say, this is a new area of technology, we want to dominate in it, we want to use it, they're giving fusion machines to Thailand, research machines, like we want to use it the same way that they've used other innovations, the same way, it's the same playbook, it's EVs, it's solar, it's...
Soft power.
Yeah, exactly. We used to do, the U.S., we did that for a long time.
Did you say we used to do that?
Yeah, we don't do it as much anymore.
Okay.
Not compared to them.
Sticking on the issue of China, have you experienced any corporate espionage?
We certainly have our share of cyber and things like that.
How do you protect against it?
Yeah, it's tough. It's like we're not at the level of a state actor, right? So part of it is you do the best you can commercially, bring in people from government who can help advise, but we're also a venture capital-backed thing. We can't have a 50-person cyber team that all they do is monitor that. We actually have to develop technology too. So it's a no-win situation, right?
You just said something very interesting, which is that you're not a state actor, and I think that's accurate right now. But I asked Scott earlier today how he would feel if the White House came and said, we would like an equity stake in your company. It happened to Intel. What would happen if President Trump came to Commonwealth and said, thank you very much, we've been very supportive, we will now take 10% of the company?
That's a tough one. I don't know what would happen. I haven't had to have that happen. In some sense, thinking about it ahead of time is not terribly useful. It's like I can think about it at the time it happens. But I think it's a dangerous road unless there is some way out of it to unwind it.
Why do you think it's a dangerous road?
My view, one of the great things that has powered America, particularly in the innovation space, is that you can be really, really focused on like very singular deliverables. So like as a company that is trying to develop a new technology, like we have to be pretty laser focused. We can't have a lot of other stakeholders pulling us other directions. Very different than Intel and GE. Intel and GE underpin a huge part of the economy, a huge part of the industry. They have earned and developed, their station in the world. That's not what we are. We're a startup. And so anything that creates an incentive misalignment like that of like, are we here because, you know, the U.S. government is using us for X, Y, and Z, this administration or not, or are we here to ruthlessly, relentlessly develop a technology? The latter is going to be more successful.
You just raised a boatload of money, several $1 billion, I think. You also, earlier this week, announced yet another power purchase agreement where you're selling power that's not being produced yet to, I think in this case it was an energy company. You've done it with Google as well. That all suggests that you really believe that you are close to delivering this energy. I think I've been covering business long enough, I've been covering Silicon Valley long enough to have seen a lot of these hype cycles and see a lot of big promises made, and then the time horizon keeps getting pushed back further and further and further. Why is it the case that, in your estimation, it won't be the same story this time?
You know, it's really hard to predict, but there is the science lining up, there is steel in the ground, there is the proof of demonstration in California. There are a lot of smart people who are involved at various, both in our company, outside our company, at labs, universities, that looks like this is doable. And the idea that like we could have people like companies like Google, any, NVIDIA, who literally have seen the world transition, have seen the world do things that people did not think was possible, and who put forward, you know, 20-plus year goals and pulled themselves, and by doing so, like all of us, forward. The idea that like we should shame them by taking a bet on a like hopeful future, it's like, no, they should be there. Like the odds of us getting that done are way, way higher if people are willing to sign an offtake agreement after looking at the plans, the science for years with our team, instead of waiting for, I'll buy the third fusion power plant. Mm-hmm. And we have right now a gap, particularly in climate, like in anything that's tough tech, we have this big gap that is, okay, yeah, those venture capitalists, they'll go develop this technology. But the infrastructure people, the finance people, will do the fifth one. Well, who's going to do the middle? And that's the type of gap that we're filling.
Thank you very much, Bob Mumgaard. Complicated but consequential. Thank you. Thank you.